Hello and welcome to SpeakEasy. The Iranians have surprised many by their lasting power. For many who felt that it would be a one-sided battle between the Israelis and the US on one side and Iran on the other, I guess all those analysts have to think again. So what's really happening 35 days after the conflict in West Asia began? The bombings continue, the killings of innocent Iranian civilians continues, and we're now seeing a surprising trend of very advanced aircraft of the United States, including an F-35 and some F-15s being hit. So what's really happening? The barrage of missiles continues. The choke point at the Strait of Hormuz continues. Difficulties in the supply of energy continue. Some ships are coming across the Straits of Hormuz, and the Iranians are saying, you must pay. We don't know who's paying and who's not paying, who's going free. But the Iranians are saying, if you're paying, you must pay in yuan. So that's where we are. So to discuss this, rather complex problem, I'm joined today by Ramanathan Kumar, a veteran intelligence analyst who's worked with India's external intelligence agency, the Research and Analysis Wing, a keen watcher of the situation. He understands the big picture better than many other people. So welcome to SpeakEasy, Kumar.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on SpeakEasy.
So Kumar, who's winning and who's losing?
Now that's a tough
I'm
question.
sorry if I'm going to pose such questions to you, but that's I think that's the question, uppermost in the minds of our viewers.
So my answer to that would be that Iran, to win, it doesn't have to lose. That's about it. They just have to hang in there. That itself constitutes a victory for them, which is exactly what they have done till now. As you rightly said, they have shown an enormous amount of resilience, maybe surprising to the Americans and Israelis, who, by all accounts, began this war possibly on a false surmise that Iran would capitulate very easily. And you had the 12-day war last time, which ended very quickly on the Americans' terms and conditions. And then, of course, you had the events in Venezuela, which possibly gave President Trump the impression that Iran too would be a cakewalk. But clearly, that has not been the case. I think all possible expectations of regime change,
that goalpost the Americans have shifted now,
which they have
from regime change to bombing Iran into the Stone Age.
Although the American president, in his definition, feels that because one set of leaders has been eliminated, regime change has taken place. But I dare say that not many would agree to such a simplistic definition of regime change. So,
well, if it's not regime change, the army chief in the United States has been fired.
That could be called a regime change of sorts. But be that as it may, I think there was also possibly an intelligence calculation, and my understanding is that that somewhat rosy picture was possibly painted by Israeli intelligence, or the chief of Israeli intelligence, who possibly had sold their idea to the Israeli prime minister that decapitation strikes would lead to a collapse of the regime. But clearly, carrying out decapitation strikes against
the regime, if anything, seems to be stronger.
Absolutely.
With more popular support on the streets of Iran.
Absolutely. So I was about to say that it is one thing to carry out decapitation strikes against terrorist organizations, which have which may not have a deep bench strength. But carrying out decapitation strikes against a well-entrenched regime which, as you said, has a certain measure of public support, maybe not the whole population, but it is a solidly well entrenched regime. And if you kill one set of people, another takes over, you get rid of them, yet another. And with each of these stages, you get a leadership that is perhaps even more hardline than the previous one. So it is the failure of this utter failure of this calculation that decapitation strikes would lead to a collapse of the regime. The inability to achieve the goal of making sure that Iran no longer has the capability to produce nuclear weapons. The entire stockpile of highly enriched uranium, 970 pounds or whatever, 60%, just short of bomb grade, which had been quote unquote obliterated during the 12-day war of June last year. That is still sitting underground, in Isfahan and Natanz by, if sort of the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency is to be believed. So none of these calculations have.
So what's your sense? I mean, we are also seeing Iran hitting at American bases in the entire region, in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Saudi Arabia, pretty much in the UAE. I mean, are you surprised by these capabilities?
Well, I think
as a long-time intelligence analyst, would you say you're surprised?
Well, I would say that yes, possibly, Iran has performed better than somebody like me expected. But then there are those who started this war and who are the real experts. They should have known better. If they are surprised.
But they clearly were delusional.
Absolutely. So that would be a rather sad commentary about the anticipatory capabilities or the analytical capabilities of all the intelligence agencies, the much vaunted intelligence agencies of the US and Israel put together.
But even in India, for instance, there's this great admiration for the Israelis. We also see in Lebanon, the Hezbollah is really hitting Israeli forces hard. We are also seeing that the IDF has scaled back its quote-unquote objectives in occupying more territory in Lebanon. So what is your sense? I mean, do intelligence agencies sometimes oversell capabilities?
I think that's a question that perhaps I am equipped and would like to answer. Yes, I think there are two things. One is that, agencies like the Mossad are famous for their acts of sort of daring do. But then acts of daring do or Dhurandhar style operations, if I may use a more desi expression, these are certainly not the be all and end all of intelligence. Those who have really done this job know that. The real job or the real tough job is to be able to anticipate accurately what your adversary is capable of doing. Shaping events, etc., is yet another function of intelligence, but the core objective, the fundamental sort of mission, is to anticipate correctly. That is what is known as the analytical function. And I think clearly in this case and in many others, the Americans have certainly got these things wrong on many occasions. And that is because of there are some fundamental reasons for that. One is, of course, the greatest occupational hazard in intelligence is this is the tendency of intelligence bosses not to speak truth to power, but produce intelligence to please. If you know what your political boss wants to hear, then intelligence agencies and
so what you're saying that you can tailor the intelligence to requirement.
Indeed, just like
just like journalists can tailor their stories, yeah,
right, to their readers
and their bosses, yeah,
that's right. But But just like, in 2003, for instance, this case was made out that Iraq had, by the CIA, to use, the famous phrase of George Tenet at that time, the CIA boss, that it was a slam dunk that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. It was the intelligence had been massaged because that is what the Bush administration at that time possibly wanted to hear.
Maybe massage is a kind word because there was really nothing that that was fine.
Well, I'm using an expression which the media uses, massaging the message. But something similar seems to have happened this time also, knowing Prime Minister Netanyahu's preference or his long-term sort of desire to reshape the Middle East, a most ambitious project. I think the Mossad seems to have gone with the assessment to him that the regime would capitulate very quickly, and Netanyahu in turn appears to have sold that story to the American president, who then thought that he would be able to achieve what no other American president in history had been able to achieve. So
the destruction of Iran, literally.
Absolutely. So that is the other aspect about producing intelligence to please the political masters. And then the final point that I wanted to make on this subject was that all the deeds of daring do of intelligence agencies, all the tactical brilliance, the operational brilliance of intelligence agencies. Now, Mossad has done a tremendous job in blowing up the pagers of all the Hezbollah operatives, hundreds of them at a time, knocking out Hamas leaders sitting in Tehran. This time, possibly penetrating Iran's cyber capabilities thoroughly, including, I believe, even the traffic signals in Tehran. So, which is how the traffic system, which is why they've been able to even pinpoint the exact location of besiege checkpoints. But in the end, all this tactical brilliance is of no use if it is not paired with political wisdom and political sagacity. That is what clearly seems to be
and a strategic objective.
And a strategic objective, absolutely. So absent clearly thought out strategic objectives in this war on the part of the Americans and the Israelis, you have a situation where they could well be now caught in a quagmire where they're constantly shifting their goals and objectives. They have handed over, as somebody wrote.
On the strategic objective, I want to ask you, the sense that I have is that the Israelis, maybe the American objective, quote unquote objective, if there is one at all, the Israeli objective to my mind seems to be, or was to have been, to reduce Iran to a situation of, say, Syria, of, say, Libya, of, say, even Iraq, degrade and make the state semi-functional or non-functional on occasion, and ensure that you would have seen, Kumar, that after they handed over Syria to an Al-Qaeda leader of their choice, they bombed the shit literally out of the Syrians, their military capabilities. For 4 to 5 days, 7 days, the Israelis kept on bombing Syria after installing a person of their choice. So my own sense is that they wanted to do this with Iran, but clearly that's a strategic objective which seems to have really been miscalculated, if I might use that word.
I would sort of totally agree with you on that score. I think Iran has tremendous sort of resilience. The regime has a lot of resilience, and the more you talk of bombing them back into the Stone Ages, forgetting the fact where they belong, forgetting the fact that, the Persian civilization existed for many hundreds of years before, a country like the United States
was thought of,
was created. Well, I mean, all this, when you do all this and you inflict so much suffering on the people when you hit,
School children,
hospitals,
universities.
sites of historical importance, and so on and so forth. I mean, even the people who may have wanted to rise against what is possibly an unpopular regime, even such people, I think, would think twice. They might, rather than sort of rise against the regime, they might well rally around the flag, as they've called. And it's quite possible that the longer that this goes on, there could be more of a groundswell of opinion of nationalist fervor in Iran, and that would certainly be an epic fury, could be an epic miscalculation.
And what's your sense? I mean, do you think that we are in a situation where, whatever happens, we don't know exactly. I will pick your brains on that. Is that the security system of American bases in the region, in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in the UAE, is all that going to be reordered, whatever else happens or doesn't happen in West Asia?
Well, it's going to be a tough call for the Gulf states and for the US. Do these Gulf states, when the dust settles on all this, do they sort of try and come to some kind of an agreement with Iran? Do they sort of cut their umbilical cord with the Americans? These are all very difficult questions, I think, to answer. But I think I would agree with those who feel that this will fundamentally affect America's pivot to Asia. That is what will, to the Indo-Pacific, that is what will be in danger. And it's possible that sort of the Americans will remain embroiled in the Middle East for a long time to come. That could also happen.
Right. And what is your sense? I mean, looking at the situation as it stands, it would appear that the Iranians are not interested in negotiations. And possibly they have good reason to be, because when they were negotiating, that's when the bombing actually started. Because a lot of people believe that just because the negotiations were actually making some progress, the attacks came. So they don't seem to be in a mood to negotiate any end to the war. How do you look at that?
Well, that is because clearly they feel that they are winning. Time is on their side. And so therefore they can afford to let this drag on for some more time. The keys to the energy security of the world, so to speak, as somebody has written, have been handed over to them. So they are now negotiating from a position of strength. Whatever the Americans may say that they've hit 11,000 targets, 12,000 targets, they have degraded their missile launching capabilities, but clearly they may have been, they have hidden reserves, and more are coming out with each passing day, whether they are hidden in caves or tunnels or what it is, or whatever it is, one doesn't know. So the long and short of it is, I think 5 weeks on, I think Iran feels that they have survived. They have taken,
and they're getting a lot of international support from people.
They have taken a beating. They have taken a frightful pounding, but they are there, and this is a country, let us not forget, with a deep tradition of celebrating martyrdom and suffering and pain. So they are taking the beating, they're taking the pain, but they are still there. They know that the Strait of Hormuz cannot be now opened without their without their consent, so to speak. So therefore, I think eventually, if you ask me how this will end, I think bombing Iran back into the Stone Ages is not an option. It will not get anybody anywhere. Eventually, there will have to be a negotiated settlement. Iran will have a prominent seat at that negotiating table. Many of the sort of maximalist demands of the Americans will have to be toned down. There could be some kind of an international coalition that guarantees the safety of the Strait of Hormuz, perhaps.
And non-attack again,
And absolutely, and
because that's quite critical.
indeed, it is the fact that you can't negotiate and then in the same breath attack the country that you are negotiating with. So I think eventually it will be there will have to be a negotiated settlement, but it will, I think, at the end of it all, the theocratic regime will continue in Iran. What happens much further down the line is a different matter.
On the subject of negotiation, our Western neighbor Pakistan has played quite a critical role, it would appear, at least in the public domain, in, passing messages, at least playing postman. Now it seems that perhaps the Iranians were not interested, and there's even Iranian analysts are saying that, if our leaders had gone to Pakistan, they could have been exposed to all kinds of things, and obviously they have people in mind whom they've lost. So they obviously feel that. So what's your sense? And also we have also seen that the Pakistanis have to return the rollover cash which they had taken from the UAE, some $3.5 billion. So is it the negotiating card they played because also they have a defense agreement with the Saudis, and the Saudis would be very happy to invoke it? What's your sense?
Well, I think clearly, in some senses, you have to sort of face the reality. I think Pakistan does feel emboldened. They feel that they are in some kind of a geopolitical sweet spot, so to speak. And clearly, the Field Marshal seems to have...
Field Marshal in the diplomatic field now.
Well, indeed, he is. He has the ear of the White House because for all kinds of wrong reasons, one can say, for a Nobel Prize nomination, some dodgy cryptocurrency deal, an equally dodgy minerals deal, and so on, and some shady hotel.
So, but the Pakistani closeness to the Americans may make the Iranians suspicious also.
Indeed, so
because this negotiating or playing the go-between is a difficult game.
Although, that's right.
Although, and there can be casualties.
Absolutely. Although Pakistan has a long track record of trying to run with the hare and hunt with the hound. So this is entirely they're playing true to form. There are many inconsistencies and contradictions here that they have to juggle with. On the other hand, you have they're pairing up with China also. They did release a 5-point peace proposal that would be far more palatable to the Iranians than the American 15-point charter of demands.
Well, I guess any effort at bringing peace or negotiation at this time would be welcome. I would imagine, people who are standing in queue for LPG cylinders or for fuel, the world over, literally, would be happy to see an end to this.
Indeed.
So on that note, I want to ask you, how do you think India's played it? After we saw the Prime Minister going to Israel on a sudden visit and, talking to Netanyahu so closely, and then a couple of days later, all this bombing started. And then we saw the Prime Minister and the External Affairs Minister working the phones to the Iranian leadership and trying to get our tankers, our Indian flag tankers, through the Straits of Hormuz. So how do you think we've played it so far? How would you assess it?
Well, I think, one of the things that I think is different now, and I would agree with a lot of people who have pointed this out. I think in the past, there has been criticism of India that, our non-aligned position, for instance, was not exactly non-aligned. We were quick to criticize the Western countries when it came to Suez, but when Soviet tanks rolled into Hungary, we did not criticize them during the 1950s. Perhaps we didn't criticize the Soviets for walking into Afghanistan in the 1970s and so on and
But
so
there
forth.
is some evidence that Mrs. Gandhi privately spoke to
Indeed.
Brezhnev.
And when he asked what is the way out, she said that it was the way in.
So we have that information.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, but I think the fact of the matter is that.
But it seems unlikely if Prime Minister Modi would have privately told Mr. Netanyahu that bombing Iran is not a good idea.
So I no longer have any access to any kind of privileged information. So I
Neither do I.
Well, so neither of us. have.
Yeah.
But the point that I was trying to make was that in the past, when we had taken certain positions, we had more often than not, we had spoken quite clearly, and whatever positions we took were on the basis of a calculation or a determination of India's long-term national interest, and there was always, when it came to our fundamental long-term national interests, there was a political consensus, a bipartisan political consensus when it came to
But
these.
on the question of national interest or, the strategic interest, I mean, it was in India's interest to keep buying oil from the Russians. It was in India's and it remains in India's interest to buy oil from the Iranians. Today, Mr. Trump has, in his largest said, oh, you can buy the floating oil, from the Russians, from the Iranians. Tomorrow, he may withdraw that consent. So, the function of national interest, in this case, will our government continue to buy oil from the Russians and the Iranians? That's a litmus test.
Indeed, I would agree with you, and this is precisely why I was saying what I was, that it was that national consensus that allowed us to, stand up for our national interests and not be sort of pushed around by any country, howsoever powerful it might be. And that is what now sort of.
No, but the weakness of the opposition parties in India probably allow the government to do whatever it wants.
So one is not blaming one side or the other,
Yeah.
but it is a question of our being able to stand up.
So you think it would be in our national interest to keep buying oil from Russia and Iran post this tamasha, whatever ends?
I think it would always have been in our national interest to do that, and we should be in a position to be able to do so. We were talking about this wonderful phrase, strategic autonomy. It's a phrase that is much bandied about. So our ability to take care of our energy security in whatever manner we deem best, I think is an integral part of strategic autonomy. So we should be able to take care of our energy security in whatever way we think.
And nobody should be able to dictate to us
Absolutely.
where you buy from. It's our business.
Indeed, there's no question of a 30-day window or a 60-day window or whatever. We buy what we want from where we want. And, let me give one example. Let us take the example of China. China has been the biggest buyer of Iranian oil till now because it suits their interest. American sanctions have not made a dime's difference to China. They have been
And Trump is very keen to visit China. Indeed. In spite of all that.
Come May, he will be there.
So basically, you have to stand up to a bully.
Indeed, you have to, and you must have the capability of doing that, which say a country like China has. They have been able to, turn this squeeze on on the critical minerals that
Yes.
all the high-tech industries of the world, particularly in America, depend on. So you must have the leverage.
And the Iranians have also shown they can impose sanctions if they control the Strait of Hormuz.
Absolutely. If there are two countries which have shown that they are capable of standing up to all kinds of, unhealthy pressures, unreasonable pressures put on them, I would say in these circumstances they are China and Iran. And I think in some ways we could take a leaf from the book of both these countries when it comes to standing up for our legitimate national interests.
Well, on that note, Mr. Kumar, thank you so much for talking to SpeakEasy. I know that these issues are not easy to deal with, but you have really shed light on a range of questions that I had, and I thank you for that. And I do hope that, sense prevails and the strategic autonomy you talked about is something which, becomes a mantra for the government, not just, in words, but in practice, because the people of India really won't be able to afford the kind of energy prices that the world is going to see probably for the next 6 months to a year. So thank you again for joining me on SpeakEasy.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.